the significance of karma, karma tu kartavyam, as Tyagarajan said, karma tu kartavyam. So it is dharma as well, and dharma means Swadharma has been at the forefront in every conceptual discussion in India. Think of family fights, and then immediately you quickly point out, and very often we keep quoting Bhagavan's famous pronunciation, Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna Paradharma Swanishtida Swadharmo Nidhanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. So the vision is that any life appropriately lived takes you to a higher level. So since spiritual goal may be sought from any kind of social situation, one is not advised to discard his station. For it is famously said, Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindeti manavaha. Speak Sanskrit is very easy because you can quickly cover a whole lot of things. One has to worship himself by doing one's own duties. So since dharma is largely Swadharma, which is intrinsically contextual in nature, this is what we have come to an agreement since yesterday. One will have to exert a lot to identify one's Swadharma. Apparently it might look very, very easy. What is my Swadharma? Doing my Swadharma? But it is not the case, and that's what I want to bring before you. As Krishna says, Kim karma, kim akarmedi kavayopyatra mohitaha. Tati karma pravakshyami. That is why I am going to give you a discourse on karma. Yajnatva mokshyase ashubhat. So Krishna in fact says, if one is clear of one's Swadharma, there is nothing else that one need to know further. Why is it? With this, he is not enlisting a set of karmas and akarmas. We have heard Chanakya Niti and a bit of Tamil that I could understand, and the general principles. But this is footed in metaphysics. So with this, he is not enlisting a set of karmas and akarmas. You do this list and you don't do this list. No. Instead, he is showing us the method by which each individual can discern his own karma. So what has been commonly said is a state of affairs. As I have said, what has been commonly said is the metaphysics. What is the absolute reality and what is the phenomenal reality. And an informed ethical agent, Shastra Avadhi, has to creatively draw ethical principles from it that are best suitable for the occasion. So as Jnana Karma Adhikarin, as Shankara would call, what is human? Human is Jnana Karma Adhikarin. That is why he says he focuses on human beings. Only human beings can do all this. He has the cognitive and the connotative faculties. So they have duties that emerge from their ontological status. Hence the primary thesis that I place before you is that in Indian philosophy there is no ethics independent of metaphysics. So with this prior understanding, let's focus on the general principles that would guide the individual in creatively responding to the ethical situations. Now these two requirements that I have set, to have the Shastra Avadhi, Shastra Jnanam on one, and responding to the empirical situations in terms of it creatively, they are not easy to come by. For as Krishna says, Gahana Karmana Gatihi. So why is it that the Gati of the Karma is so Gahana? What makes it so intricate that we find it difficult to discern our Swadharma from Paradharma? The reason is simple. To know Swadharma, you need to know three things: the nature of the absolute reality, the nature of the phenomenal self, and the ability to creatively respond to the situational challenges. In effect, a Karma Yogi should far exceed a Dhyana Yogi in both the faculties, that is the cognitive and the cognitive faculties. The beauty of the Gita is that it synthesizes the metaphysics. Yesterday in Srini's paper we will see how he synthesizes the metaphysics and its application. I don't want to call it ethics because it's not ethics per se. It's metaphysics itself as one single unit interconnected. His synthesizing ability is amazing. No theory stands distinct and isolated in Gita. They together form a web of theories, all leading to praxis. In the 16th chapter, I am repeating, Tasmat Shastram Pramanam de Karya Akarya Vyavastito Jnatva Shastra Vidhanuktam Karma Kartimiharhasi. So these karmas, as they are called, are to be performed in such a fashion as it fulfills the individual well-being and at the same time the well-being of the world at large. So this is the paradox that we are brought to. How is it that one can perform a karma which brings individual well-being and at the same time the well-being of the other? So this is a famous enigma, the famous theory in ethics, which says that the self-interest invariably counters the interest of the other. Hence, a conflict between these two is sure to emerge. So, if you take care of self-interest, by rule, you fail to take care of others' interest. Now, this is one. On the other, there is also the fact that the performance of by performance of karma, what happens spiritually is that you're pouring oil into the burning fire, because as you are doing karmas, again you acquire vasanas, and you are ever tied to the cycle, praditya samutpada chakra, as Buddha would say. So hence this route of action is not really good for the well-being, spiritual well-being of the agents. So these are the two problems that we are going to confront when you promote karma theory. Let's see how Lord resolves this. So now Gita comes up with an amazing formula by which every act of an individual will naturally become beneficial for the other, and such an action will not bind the individual down to the worldly life further. So this technique of sacrificing the self-interest for the welfare of the larger interest of the beings around, which interestingly also opens up the way of release for one, is encased in the principle of Yajna. In what follows, I'll try to fix, if time permits, this principle of Yajna in the Karya Akarya debate. So the origin of the principle Yajna, you know that Yajadani Dhadu, that's what it literally means. We have it in the early Vedic literature, and Upanishads as Adhyatma Vidya apply this principle for the inner modification of the self. So we have a glimpse of it in the very first mantra of the Ishavasya Upanishad, the first mantra, the third line, Tena Tyaktena Bhunjidhaha. Now you have the famous Shankara interpretation. Shankarite interpretation is to call for a to renounce the world. That is what Shankara says. So Tena Tyaktena Bhunjidhaha means you should renounce the world because it is not the real one. But there could also be a plain meaning to it. What is the plain meaning? Without any agendas. It calls for enjoying the world by sacrifice. Now this seems again contradictory. For self-enjoyment you should grab rather than sacrifice. This art of enjoying by sacrificing has been explained at length in Gita, borrowing the principle of Yajna from the Vedic literature. In the third and the fourth chapter, Krishna goes extensively. He says, Yajnardhad karmanonyatra lokoyam karmabandhanaha tadardham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samacharet. So one will have to perform every action as Yajna. Yajnardhad karmanonyatra. So now what is Yajna? Yajna literally means, as I have said, Yajadani dhanu, to give. The popular sense of Yajna is what we see in the first mantra of the Yajurveda, Stadamaya Karmanaha, describes Yajna as the noblest of all deeds, done for the greatest good for the greatest number. Now this is popular, and it has been mostly used, this is the mostly used sense of Yajna, where you speak of collective works for the benefit of the larger community. Such works are called Yajna. Even today we employ this sense when we say Shuchi Karna Yajna, Saksharada Yajna, so on and so forth. Also, but when we come to the sacred literature, you have Yajna, by which an ordinary man envisions a sacrificial pyre and offerings made ahuti in it. But remember, this is just one form of Yajna, the gross form. The fires, the sacrificial pedestal, and also the offerings can take different forms. Though even in Shruti we speak of the subtle form of Yajna, where I'll come to that, but the concept receives a meticulous philosophical analysis at the hands of Lord Krishna. According to Krishna, every action of us should be performed as a sacrifice. Even mundane routine act like eating, Lord says, consuming the prashasta shlokaha, yajnashishtashanas santo muchyante sarvakilbishahi bhunjate te tu agham babaha e pachanti atma karanat. I take some food, these days I stay alone. I take some food, invariably feed someone, so that otherwise it will be bhunjate te tu agham baba e pachanti atma karanat. You can't cook for yourself. So one is allowed to nourish yourself after feeding the other. That is, the cooking should be done for another, and then you can have the remainings. One should cook for primarily for others and can consume. Now this is just an instance of eating, and this format has to be followed in every action, and wherever this format cannot be followed, it should be minimized. That is the message. So this way, you should transform every action as a kind of a yajna, sacrifice performed selflessly and nourish yourself along with it. Now Krishna warns Arjuna and through the whole entire humanity that if actions are not performed following this principle of yajna, you will be bound by it. Yajna shishtamrita bhujo yandi brahma sanatanam. Mayam logosya ayajnasya. This world is not meant for someone who is not engaged in this principle of yajna. Mayam logosya ayajnasya. Hutonya Guru Sittama. So citing the significance of this principle of yajna, Krishna says, see, this very creation is footed on the principle of yajna. He shows it extensively. The very creation was made with this principle of yajna. Sahayajna prajasishtva purovacha prajapati. And he goes on saying how the principle of yajna happens to be the fundamental principle upon which the whole creation happens. And further he says how the world functions with this principle of yajna. Annad bhavanti bhudani. These are all very precious slokas, so I don't want to repeat. Annad bhavanti bhudani parjanyad annasambhavaha. Yajnad bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudbhava. Anna happens to be from the parjanya from the yajna. So therefore yajna is the, and we beings are being nourished by the food. So yajna happens to be the very foundation of the whole process of the world. And he says, karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, brahmakshara samudbhava. So even the absolute has been placed on the functional mode, even the absolute has been placed on the principle of yajna. Evam pravartidam chakram ma anuvarti yadi hayaha. Who doesn't follow this principle of this principle of yajna, mokham pardhasa jivadi. He is leading a very wasteful life. So in brief, the single principle that supports the very existence of entities in this world is yajna. And everybody will have to give rather than take. So giving is the principle, the fundamental principle, not begetting. So with this we get things clear. There is absolutely no place for one's individual cravings and desires. The principle of yajna reigns supreme and one will have to lead a life subservient. How much of time? So indeed every act of one should be converted as an yajna. So with this it becomes clear how the principle of yajna evades the basic conflict between the interest of the self and the other. By the performance of all this Bhuda yajna, Manusha yajna, Deva yajna and all that, these are the routine things. The call is to convert every act as an yajna. So the yajnas performed for the well-being of others are in fact, so the formula is very simple. When you perform mundane action, the material benefit is for the other and the spiritual benefit is for yourself. This is the formula, it's simple formula. And as mentioned earlier, the principle of yajna goes subtle when it, and as it goes subtle, the more beneficial it is. And then he says there could be varieties of yajna, dravya yajna, tapo yajna, prana yajna, and the yoga yajna. And then he culminates with jnana yajna, and he says that jnana yajna is the perfect. And also he speaks about, in Gita itself, he speaks about how the Vishayan should be done ahuti into the senses into the restraint with the sensual as well as the motor organs. So this ascent towards the jnana path has to be done along with the performance. And this essential selflessness has to be the driving motive. I'll wind it. The beauty of this principle of yajna is that you naturally take care of the well-being of the other and the world at large. Note that the nature has been described in a different color in Indian philosophy. Nature is a co-partner in your spiritual progress, and in Indian thought, nature is not just dumb matter. It's a participant, and there is a teleological principle that is functioning. Nature has an order, it has a design, and then the best you attune. See, I have already told you that it has been footed on the principle of yajna, and you will have to tune yourself, your life, your ways of functioning, your aspirations, tune with how the nature functions, and that is how you would attain the best of your goals, you will have to tally in time, in congruence with the functioning of the nature, and all the rituals that we have are meant to get oneself tuned with this high. We all have to let us bring back speculation into our fold, and let there be philosophers who speculate on what is the design of nature, so that they can envision her plans and how she performs Yajna in terms of the larger community, so that you can also fall in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. Actually, we have been talking about Karya from different perspectives. Parveen Sultana has done a beautiful presentation by showing how it could be seen from the supreme point of view. And you have shown that very nicely, that Karya is a Yajna. This is a new mode of approach. And you have also stated that in this approach, all our actions are for the well-being of the other, that is the material side, and the spiritual side will come back to you. This is a very beautiful presentation, approach. But what I would like to know from you is there any action which can directly bring me the result, instead of sharing it with others? You get my point. That is, when you say that all our actions that are performed, the material side, we are doing it for the well-being of the other. The other is involved. And the spiritual side will be for my own sake. But is there any action that which we perform can bring the result to me directly instead of involving the other? Of course, as you said that the other is not the other is you. But is there any other way of looking at the action which can bring the benefit directly to the one's own self?
So if the self is involved, then that is a phenomenal self, jiva, then you will have the vasanas. If the self comes in, that is why Lord says that, two things, that if you have to have the spiritual benefit, what is the spiritual benefit? You distance yourself. You are not accruing the vasanas. You are not pouring oil onto the burning fire. You will have to stop the praditya samutpada chakra. So you should not have the involvement of the jiva directly into the action. In that case, you are lost. Then karma will not take you ahead.
That is the case. If I don't need the spiritual benefits, assume for an atheist, but I perform some action. But when I perform that action, if I am not interested, if I am not a spiritualist, I don't want the benefit. So what?
I have this is one of the reasons maybe we have this Chatushpad Dharma, where you have Dharmecha, Arthecha, Kamecha, Mokshecha. Now Dharmecha is also to govern, because your wish may be in conflict with somebody else. So then how do we follow this? What do we do? So this whole business of nihilism also is addressed there. Also selfishness of the gene is also addressed, in the sense there has to be some invocatory authority to be able to decide what is the hierarchy of freedoms that are to be granted. So that is why the public context is always important. And this solipsism can be ultimately destructive, but it is not bad if you, it is not. It is also non-normative in one sense. I think we can talk about this at greater length. Yeah.